Hi, I'm Ed Rushman. This is the Whitestone Journal. I'm on my drive home right now in the setting sun. A few moments about outrage and moral or righteous indignation. Just read today where one of the candidates who's since bowed out, said it's important that the people keep their sense of outrage. And I beg to differ. Outrage is a funny thing. There's an outrage is a great offense. It's considered a great offense because it sparks or it elicits a sense of outrage. But this isn't necessarily a very positive thing. It's good to recognize when something is wrong, when it truly is. It's good to be motivated to fix that. But outrage generally in the past has resulted in riots, in lynchings, in a lot of things that were attempts at justice, but where frequently the innocent were hurt, or even the guilty didn't really receive due process or weren't really receiving the benefits of the law. In the American system, and certainly seems reasonable in the light of Catholic teaching, we even protect the guilty from excessive, what one might call excessive justice. It's not really justice, but it's not supposed to be about revenge. It's not supposed to be about the public venting their anger on someone who may very well have done something wrong. But that doesn't mean that they should be hung in the streets, that they should be tarred and feathered, or otherwise abused. They should go through due process. They should be subject to the law and imprisoned if they've broken the law. If they haven't broken the law, under our system, they really shouldn't be abused. Now, it doesn't mean they can't be excoriated in the press. It doesn't mean that they can't be, if you will, insulted, that they're a crime against humanity, even if it's not a crime against the law, that it can't be pointed out. But we have to be very careful about what we're asking for here. The first thing I always think of course, is McCarthyism. Joe McCarthy only had to accuse somebody. The accusation alone was enough to destroy someone and keep them from working. And this was considered okay. In earlier times, an accusation could cause somebody to be hung in the streets, or they'd just take them out of town. I remember there was a case with a young woman that worked in a factory that was murdered, and they weren't sure who did it, but they put one of the managers at the factory on trial. And after the trial, he was, I believe, found guilty. But the crowd was not willing to let him go through the appeal process, nor were they willing to let him out of their sight. And they took him outside the town and hung him. The people that did that were never punished. They were known. There were pictures of them. But that was perfectly fine with everybody. He had sparked the outrage of the public, in their view. And of course, now in our time, there's serious doubts about whether or not he was really guilty. They actually think it was somebody else. Ironically, the person that was lynched was a minority relative to the town. The person that they think actually really did it was also a minority, a different one. So that it's quite possible that whichever way that the proceedings had gone, whichever person it was, probably either person would have ended up lynched. But of course, we really don't know that either one did it. So outrage is a funny thing. If you're going to favor outrage, then you have to favor a certain amount of lawlessness. Like I said, lynchings, whether literal or metaphorical. There's going to be bad things done. We really need to think about that. Righteous indignation is the idea that something is really wrong, and we are in a righteous enough position to judge that and be really, really upset over it. I don't know that we get many chances for this. Jesus said that let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And I think we've forgotten that to some degree. For myself, I'm hardly in a position to have righteous indignation over anything. I know what it means to be wrong. I know what it means to have been in error. and think that somebody was responsible for something that wasn't, to get my facts a little bit mixed up. I've done that more than once. So I'm a little bit hesitant now to condemn, because I've always got the chance that I've got it wrong. There's eyewitness cases and things. It's funny, I think of the assassination of Robert Kennedy by Sirhan, who was a Jordanian citizen, if I remember right, who shot him in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel. He was Palestinian, according to him, I don't know, not Muslim, and was very upset over some things that Bobby Kennedy had said, and assassinated him. There were people there that saw it. They were right there. There were several other people, actually, that were shot, that all survived. But the thing that's interesting to me is how much they put him on trial and went through long, extended proceedings, even though there were a lot of witnesses and everything else. And decades later, people were trying to get him released, saying that he didn't really do it, even though there were all these eyewitnesses. And of course, eyewitness testimony is not necessarily always reliable. But if we would have that much doubt over something as certain as it was, and I'm not saying that it's 100% certain, but then how much more should we be careful about rushing to judgment on things? It's the same thing. Once we decide that someone's evil, whether it's the 1% or some particular candidate or some particular group or anything else, once we decide that and set ourselves up against them, that we're the righteous ones and they're the evil ones, it's a very, very hazardous situation for our souls. It's certainly hazardous for the people that we're accusing. And the sun is very bright in my face right now. Anyway, something to think about before we go down the path of outrage and hating. And if there's outrage, if there's a sense of outrage, hatred is not far away. Before we go down that path, we really ought to think about whether or not this is something that we should be doing, whether or not this is Christ-like. And if you don't agree with Jesus and all that, still think about it. Look at the ugly faces that are in the media and everything else, where people are angry and outraged, and look at the hatred in their faces. Is that who we want to be? It's not who I want to be. If I ever saw a picture of myself looking like that, with that much hatred in my heart, I would have a very hard time. It's not who I want to be. I hope it's not who you want to be. I'm Ed Rushman, Whitestone Journal.